So this week is National Eating Disorders Awareness Week, and I wanted to make a video about the fact that men get eating disorders too, and I'm one of them. I was in the hospital this year, from September until February. A lot of you know I went to Edmonton. A lot of you don't know what happened or what I was doing there. I was very, very sick, and I went there to get treatment. 25% of people with eating disorders are male. 60% of those are straight. The majority of men with eating disorders, I believe it's about 60%, they may be 40% of men with eating disorders have binge eating disorder. The rest have anorexia or bulimia or the other sub-varieties. Well, first of all, where did this all start? Why does a man get an eating disorder? Some of the reasons are the same as women do, and some of them are a little bit unique to the culture that men grow up in. I grew up in a home where healthy eating was everything, and you had to have an 8-pack, and you had to exercise constantly all day, and if you didn't have an 8-pack, if you could even pinch the skin around your stomach, you were getting fat, and you needed to eat less or eat better or exercise more. And in fact, my mom was so horrifically afraid of fat that she didn't want us to gain too much muscle in case it would look like we were fat. If we got too muscular, then people wouldn't be able to see. Then if under our clothes, we would just look big, and that was terrifying. She used to go up to people, strangers, in the middle of a grocery store who she thought were a little bit overweight, and start telling them all about the apple cider diet and the lemon water diet, and she judged everyone based on what they weighed or whether they had a little bit of a belly, or basically if they weren't in bodybuilding competition stage shape, then there was something horribly wrong with them. I was constantly told that fat people were lazy, that they were incapable of caring for their children, that they were incapable of holding down a marriage, they were incapable of being productive workers, that basically anything that could be wrong with a person or any lack of virtue that a person could have, that was fat people. And so this was the environment that I grew up in. And let me say this, there's nothing wrong with wanting your kids to eat healthy or wanting them to get an appropriate amount of exercise. But when you're a fanatic about it, and when it rules everything, and when there's a terror of fat, as if it was, as if fat people were the Antichrist themselves, that's when it goes too far. Because everything in moderation. You can eat junk food in moderation. You can, you don't need to exercise 12 hours a day. You can exercise in moderation. And couch potato in moderation. Everything in a balance, and you'll be fine. But we were always put on these new diets. It would be this health food diet or that health food diet, or it would be the crazy diets, the instant mashed potato diet I was put on. What's another one? Oh, there was a while where we went kosher. Supposedly we would stay thinner if we didn't eat any pork or shellfish or whatnot. And there's always the worry about polluting our bodies with artificial flavors and colors and toxins and sugar and processed and this and that and the other. And it was overboard. But that's the way that I grew up. And so, going on into adulthood, all I knew is like, you have to eat healthy, you have to have an 8-pack, you have to be fit, you have to exercise all the time. And that's something that, with the fitness and health craze, and with this idea that men are supposed to have 6-packs and are supposed to be willing to do anything it takes to get them, let's take diet pills, be on an extremely restricted diet, spend most of your time obsessing about your exercise and what kind of workouts you're going to do and what kind of supplements you're going to take and what's the newest way to lower your body fat. There's a lot of guys who throw up their food, bulimic. Not all of them binge, but a lot of them do, because they deprive themselves of certain foods for so long to try to keep their 6-pack that their cravings just overwhelm them and they binge. And then they're afraid that they've messed everything up. They're going to lose their 6-pack. Maybe they've polluted their body with unhealthy food, whatever. They throw it up, or they make it up the next day with exercising more, maybe eating less, cutting more things out of their diet. And that's what it became for me. I had this idea that to be a man, you had to have a 6-pack, or you had to have an 8-pack. Being lean and ripped was all there was. If you weren't lean and ripped, you weren't a real man. And this idea that if you're not uber fit, that somehow your life is going to, you're not going to have lovers, people will look down on you. I don't really know what exactly the obsession is with having a 6-pack. Everywhere you go, there's the new way to get a 6-pack, and whether that's a supplement or an exercise program or a special kind of gym set that you can buy or whatever, a new diet, it's ridiculous, because if we have to fight that hard against our bodies to get something, then I think it means that it's not natural. If you have a 6-pack as a byproduct of your genetics or as a byproduct of your active lifestyle, fine. But if you're going out of your way to get a 6-pack and you're trying to trick your body with all of these diets and supplements and exercise schedules and everything like that, I think you're going against the way your body's meant to be. But that's what happened to me this last year. I'd been working out and I'd been bulking up. And as you bulk up, you gain a little bit of fat. And I no longer had, an 8-pack. I had a vaguely visible 6-pack. But I was scared. That wasn't enough. It wasn't really defined. It wasn't an 8-pack. I was too fat, and I wasn't fit enough. And, I became absolutely obsessed with my fat percentage and my workouts and my diet and my supplements, and it was just constantly on my mind, just worry. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with getting fit or eating well or whatever. It's when it becomes a fanatic obsession, when it takes over your life, when it becomes something based out of fear. You're afraid to eat this. You're afraid to go a day without exercising. You're afraid to gain a few percentage in body fat. You're afraid of not being uber ripped. And I didn't realize that I honestly didn't realize that all the pictures that you see in the men's magazines, Men's Health, Men's Fitness, whatnot, that those people have gone on a diet, dehydrated themselves, etc., just for the photo shoot, and that they don't look like that all the time, and that furthermore, a lot of the pictures are airbrushed, and it's something that's completely unrealistic, and it's not a sustainable look. You can't look that ripped for more than a few hours or a few days at best. And, in the movies, you see Schwarzenegger, you see Stallone, you see these guys, and by Stallone's own admission, he was on such a restrictive diet for Rocky III, the one where he had the best body of all his films, that he was passing out constantly on set, blacking out from lack of food. And something that a lot of people don't realize is that not all eating disordered men are emaciated. A lot of them have too low body fat, and that's where I started out, trying to lower my body fat and trying to lower my body fat. And eventually I started losing muscle weight and other stuff as well. But by that time I was so obsessed with getting, with being as ripped as possible that I thought, okay, well, I'm losing weight, I'm losing muscle, but that's okay because I'll have a six pack. And then pretty soon it spiraled into complete anorexia, where you do become obsessed with being thin, and it's a psychological thing that happens because of um, food deprivation. It sets off certain physiological and psychological processes in the body that are a result of dieting. Anorexia, the desire to be skeletal, a lot of it comes the uh, from the lack of nutrients and how that affects the body and the brain functions. And um, only after you've been refed can you see what problems you still have left to deal with that aren't directly being affected by just malnutrition. I don't have time to go into all of the science here, but I mean, so basically, I suffered from anorexia, I suffered from bulimia, um, where I'd feel terrified that I had eaten too much, or I'd eaten too much junk food, or too many carbs, or whatever it was that was going to ruin my six pack, or uh, pollute my body with artificial flavors and this, that, the other. So I'd throw it up, and I suffered from compulsive overexercise. I was constantly exercising. It never felt like enough. It never felt like I'd done enough to make my six pack the best that, or I eventually ended up with an eight pack, the best that it could be and the most defined that it could be in the rest of my body. I was always thinking that I could look just a little bit more muscular, just a little bit more defined, and if I exercised just a little bit more. And then there's sometimes I suffer from bigorexia, which is where you don't feel like you're muscular enough, and I think a lot of guys suffer from that, where you look in the mirror and you see a skinny, pathetic weakling, and other people see someone who is very muscular and strong looking and imposing, and you can't see it. You only see the skinny guy you once were, and you do anything, and some guys go on steroids, and you buy expensive supplements, and your life revolves around the gym because you feel inferior compared to all the other men around you. And then, of course, there's orthorexia, which not a lot of people know about, but that's just a complete obsession with health food to the point where it takes over your entire life, and where you're constantly thinking about it and planning your next meals and worried about, oh God, I was worried about what soil the plants were grown in that made the food and the supplements that I was eating. And it just becomes this cycle of fear where you're afraid to eat things because you're going to get toxins in your body, and you're going to get artificial and over refined food in your body. And what if it wasn't raised in the right soil? What if there were pollutants in the air from a nearby factory? Oh my God, it's terrible. And a lot of people with orthorexia lose massive amounts of weight because they are so afraid to eat certain things, and they often end up just eating certain fruits and vegetables and whatnot, not getting enough in their diet. Um, and yeah, all of that combined together for me, and I've struggled with an eating disorder since I was about 14, just because of the way that I was brought up. But there of us three brothers who grew up in the same household, I'm the only one who ended up with an eating disorder, and that's genetic. You have the genetic predisposition or vulnerability to develop an eating disorder. Basically, what happens is you have the genetics, and then environment oftentimes pulls the trigger or influences the specific way in which your eating disorder expresses itself. And so, actually, what happens is if you have the genetic propensity to develop an eating disorder and you go on a diet, you will develop an eating disorder. And this is where culture and media and whatnot play a part, because it's more likely in this culture, in this era, in this country, for you to go on a diet than in other places in the world or at other times in history. You're more likely to be going on a diet because 90% of people try a diet at some point in their lives in this culture. And so that's what happens. You try a diet, and because you have the genetics, it develops into an eating disorder. If you were never to have dieted or never to have been exposed to the environmental factors, you may not have developed an eating disorder, but that's not always true. Sometimes you develop an eating disorder no matter what, just because you're genetically hardwired to do so. And I don't have the time to get into all of the nitty-gritties about the genetics and the evolutionary mechanisms and whatnot. But basically, you don't choose to have an eating disorder. It develops, it creeps up on you, and pretty soon you have a full-blown one without even realizing what's happened. And I ended up really underweight when all I had intended was to gain muscle and to get a six-pack. And I was really sick, and I ended up spending 4 months in the hospital, and they're helping me, gain the weight back and get nutritionally restored. But the hardest part is the mental part. Every day I go out and I feel huge. I feel like a lard bucket. I feel like I'm really overweight to the point that it's going to make other people notice and other people judge me and sneer at me, and I feel like I'm not attractive, and people wouldn't want to sleep with me, people wouldn't want to be my friends, people wouldn't want to hire me, because what I see in the mirror versus what other people see when they look at me is two completely different things. I no longer have an 8-pack or a 6-pack or even a 4-pack with the weight that I've gained back, and I struggle with that all the time. But the reality is, what it took to get that 8-pack and keep that 8-pack totally ruined my life and wasn't worth it at all. And this isn't to say that every man who gets an eating disorder gets one because they want a 6-pack. There's many, many different reasons that people get an eating disorder, but I feel like the pressure on men to get ripped is getting greater and greater. Our models are skinny and ripped. The guys on the covers of the magazines are ripped. The mannequins in the stores are skinny and ripped. You've got all of these things, P90X, and it's just the in the movies, everything. It's just all around us that a guy, to be a real guy, to be attractive, to be masculine, to be whatever, that you have to be muscular and you have to have low body fat. And that's why I said before that what was said to me when I first told my doctor that I had anorexia, he said, "But you're still muscular." And I mean, that's a huge misconception, that all people with eating disorders are severely emaciated. I became severely underweight over a matter of time, but you never start off like that. You start off at a healthy weight. A lot of guys start off a little bit overweight, and they've been teased about it and made fun of, and then when they try to get fit, it just becomes an obsession that spirals out of control. But a lot of guys have muscles, but have extremely, extremely low body fat, and are malnutritioned. And if your body fat is too low, you won't absorb and store vitamins and minerals in your body. Your testosterone levels will drop, which wreaks havoc. you'll be exhausted, you'll have no energy, you'll have no libido, you'll have all of these problems, and if your body fat drops too low, you can die. And I think that it's hard for a lot of us males to get help or to admit that we have an eating disorder because it's viewed as something female or something vain or a choice or any one of these things, and fitness and health is viewed as so positive that anyone who says that it's gone overboard for them is told that they're being down on the fitness and health community, and that's not true. Um, we're just saying that if you become a fanatic about it, if you become obsessed with it, if you take it too far, and um, me having been eating disordered and an obsessive exerciser for the past 10 years, I've had so many overuse injuries that it's affected my jobs. I haven't been able to get my driver's license because I've always been injured. Anyone who knows me, I'm always injured, and it's because I exercise too much. And there's always that risk, is breaking bones and straining muscles and injuring ligaments and whatnot. And especially if you're malnutritioned and your body's weakened. Yeah. So this is the first time I've really admitted publicly, so to speak, to a lot of you that I have an eating disorder, and that's why I was gone in Edmonton for 4 months. And I hope that I've educated people a little bit about the fact that men do have eating disorders, and some of where that can come from. I've only touched very lightly on one of the aspects that drives my eating disorder. But people think that the desire to have an 8-pack and to be super muscular and ripped and all of this, leading to an eating disorder, is just a sign of vanity, when really it's a sign of low self-esteem. You feel so unworthy and so loathsome and so inferior and so ashamed and so horrible about yourself and about what you see in the mirror, and it makes it really, really difficult. You can't stand, and you think that it affects your worth as a person. You think that people won't love you, people won't like you, people will judge you. You think that you're only a real man, or you'll only have respect, or any one of these things. It stems from a lack of confidence, a lack of self-esteem, a lot of pressure, pressure to be perfect, pressure to be masculine, pressure from our culture, pressure from within, and everything with food in the body has deeper issues that are never about food in the body. They're about the way you were brought up, the pressures that your parents put on you, the pressures you put on yourself, the culture you grow up in, the self-esteem issues you have, your biology, on and on and on. I don't want anyone to think that it's just about getting a six-pack or just about vanity, but that's my little tidbit to add to National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And I hope that if there's any guys out there watching this who struggle with some of the same things, that you can definitely send me a message and I'll talk to you. And for everyone else, I hope this has been educational.